Hi friends, it feels like a good time in Apex Legends to get back into the lore, and what better place to look at than the lore skins. There's a lot of lore hidden in these skins, and it feels like no one's really taken the time to cover them. So today, let's look through all of them and I'll explain the lore story behind them. And what better place to start than with Bloodhound? The first lore skin for Bloodhound is actually the only epic lore skin in the game currently. This lore skin reads, "In a battle for their very soul, Bloodhound travelled to an otherworldly realm of mists to defeat or be defeated by these ethereal manifestations of their sins. Sins they believed were the reason for Talos's impending destruction." So this skin actually ties in with the lore of Talos, and specifically World's Edge. You see, the planet Harvester was causing damage to the entire planet, and Bloodhound was feeling the pain of the planet, as well as the beings in the wildlife. The lore text makes direct reference to this moment here, where Bloodhound sees the mythical plane as a manifestation of their sins, or at least their perceived sins, of somewhat abandoning the old ways and not protecting the planet as they should. There's also a tie-in with Boone here as well, because part of those sins and that guilt is actually the guilt Bloodhound feels over Boone's death. The next Bloodhound lore skin we've got is Wise Warrior, a skin that is kind of a tribute to Arthur, Bloodhound's uncle. Bloodhound was raised by their uncle Arthur, who believed technology weakens one's spirit. He taught a young Bloodhound to trust in nature and one's own instincts according to the old ways. And before I talk about the lore behind this skin, I'll actually move on to the next Bloodhound lore skin, which is Youngblood, because the lore for these two tie in together. Raised in a village that rejected automation, Bloodhound grew up knowing nothing of modern technology, but one day they found and used an abandoned charge rifle to fight a powerful beast, and their life changed forever. The lore for this skin of course ties in with the old way stories from the Outlands, where we see a young Bloodhound and their background being raised by Arthur. The skin represents the old ways and the new, and this brings happy and sad memories for Bloodhounds, who became a new kind of representation for their village, a representation of the old ways and the new. It also represents a feat achieved by not many others, where Bloodhound defeated a great beast. However, this skin also marks the sad memory of Arthur, a great warrior and leader who raised Bloodhound as his own, but was tragically taken from Bloodhound at a young age. So those are all the Bloodhound lore skins. Let's move on to Lifeline next. First up, it's London Calling. On a trip to Solace, Lifeline befriended and joined a touring punk band called the Flyer Liars. It was a small step out of her parents' wealthy world, one that eventually gave her the strength to leave home for good. This lore skin actually goes hand in hand with another called Hyped Healer, which has an identical lore story blurb. Now the lore behind this one's quite a fun one. Lifeline joined a pretty popular band called the Flyer Liars, and she became their drummer. The next Lifeline lore skin is Mischief Medic. Joining the Frontier Corps was Lifeline's way of making up for her family's mistakes, but even with the best intentions, she couldn't escape her family's reputation. This is actually the outfit she wore when she broke into Silver Pharmaceuticals with Octane to try and get her hands on some much needed medication for the Frontier Corps and the people they were trying to save. Unfortunately, the alarm gets triggered and she has to use her wingsuit, courtesy of Octane, to get out of there. And that leads us into Lifeline's final lore skin, Vital Signs. AJ Shea was always the first with her hand up to volunteer for the most extreme expeditions in her time with the Frontier Corps, so much that they were informally dubbed Shakespeditions. This is essentially what Lifeline wore to work on her most challenging expeditions to help people with the Frontier Corps. Sadly, this skin also brings back some memories of the people she lost on those expeditions. So that rounds out Lifeline's lore skins. Let's move on to everyone's favourite Marvin unit, Pathfinder. First up, we've got Memoir Noir. Years ago, Pathfinder woke up in an abandoned warehouse with no knowledge of his past. Then, one fateful day, his good friend Victor Maldera helped him unlock pieces of his forgotten memories. Now this is clearly from Fight Night Stories from the Outlands, and it's referring to where Pathfinder was working in a bar and ended up meeting Victor Maldera. Together they get tangled up in a bit of a mobster story on Malta, and they end up becoming friends, fighting their way out, although the ending is a little bit sad, where Pathfinder gets hit with a stray bullet and he parts ways with Victor Maldera. Luckily for Pathfinder, that's not the end for him, and this outfit kind of remembers those noir gangster days fighting crime with Victor Maldera. Pathfinder's other lore skin is the Servin Marvin. Pathfinder once attended a high society charity event on Malta. Unfortunately, the party blew up before he could give a toast to his friends, friendship, and riding a zipline with friends. This one ties in with the Grand Soiree event and recalls Pathfinder's time in high society on Malta. Let's move on to Wraith next. This is still one of my favourite skins in the game, and it has a great lore story behind it. It's the Voidwalker skin, of course. Wraith spent years as an Ares Division test subject, exposed to increasingly dangerous experiments. She lost hope of ever escaping until she met an unlikely ally, herself, from another dimension. So this ties into the Voidwalker event, and it's the very attire Wraith was wearing when she broke into the Ares Division lab looking for information on Emir Singh. She would go into the void and ultimately end up saving another version of herself. Wraith's second lore skin is the Liberator. Once a senior science pilot, Dr. Renee Blasey was driven to unlock the secrets of phase tech and volunteered for experimental trials. These tests went wrong and stripped her of her memories, but Ares wasn't willing to let her go so easily, and the lore behind this is from Wraith's time held captive by the Ares Division after she lost her memories and her mind after undergoing these experiments. Let's finish with Wraith's third and final lore skin. This one's Quarantine 722. Long before she was a deadly Voidwalker, Dr. Renee Blasey was a scientist working under the IMC Ares Division on a mysterious project known only as Wraith. This refers to the project that Wraith was working on that ultimately ended up giving her her void-walking abilities. It's a project she worked on with Emir Singh, but ultimately this led to what we saw with the Liberator skin, where she was held captive by the Ares Division. Let's hop along to Bangalore next. Her first lore skin is Decorated Line. Sergeant First Class Anita Williams was born into a military family. Both parents are veterans of the Titan Wars. This IMC soldier's first uniform was more than a badge of honor. It was a symbol of family. So this was Bangalore's first uniform, and it reflects on Bangalore's story as well as her family's story of her being in the IMC military, being raised through the ranks as a soldier. This was what she wore when she fought in the frontier wars for the IMC against a militia, during which unfortunately she was injured during battle. And this leads us into Bangalore's second lore skin, Milspec. A product of her military family, Bangalore's loyalty has always lain with the IMC. However, those loyalties were tested when they came to kill her brother. Of course, this ties into the same story, but a little bit later on in Bangalore's lore. You see, just after Bangalore and Jackson escaped the war, Bangalore was annoyed at Jackson because he essentially deserted the war and Bangalore didn't really have a choice. So she ended up sending out a message, kind of like a distress signal. This led to an ex-IMC pilot tracking them down on Storm Point on the planet Gaia. With Jackson's life under threat, Bangalore joined forces with her brother to take down the pilot that essentially came to defeat Jackson. At this moment, Bangalore was forced to choose between her loyalty to the IMC and the loyalty to her family. Together though, they were able to defeat the pilot, and this outfit is a memory of that. Let's move on to Crypto next. He is one called Inconspicuous. Before Taejin Park was a wanted man, he was a gifted programmer and engineer. The drone cameras that broadcast the Apex games were originally his creation. In another life, they may have made him famous. So this outfit ties into Crypto's past. Before Crypto was essentially Crypto, he was Taejin Park. Now Taejin Park was a simple man, but a very intelligent man, who was very good with technology. However, one day, they came across something they shouldn't have. They discovered some secrets behind the Apex games. This led to Taejin Park's sister Mila being abducted, and Taejin Park was framed for her murder, thus becoming a wanted man. After escaping some syndicate police, he shed his identity to become Crypto. Thus, this skin is a tribute to his true identity. Next up, we've got Valkyrie, who also has one lore skin called Birthright. Valkyrie ultimately finds her father's body in space, still in his Titan. He finally receives the funeral he deserves, but she keeps his helmet, not to mourn his life, but celebrate it. Another one of my favourite skins here, Valkyrie's father was of course a famous pilot called Viper. Part of the Apex Predators under Cuban Blisk, he was sadly slain by Jack Cooper and BT. Valkyrie, even since she was a kid, had always wanted to live up to her father's image, but alas, that wasn't the path she ended up taking. Instead, she would use her father's helmet and the wings from her Titan to create her VTOL jets courtesy of Rampart, and join the Apex games as somewhat of a hybrid pilot, cross-legend. And let's round out part 1 with Vantage's only lore skin called Ice Cold. Hunter by day, storyteller by night, Vantage loved to conjure tall tales for her mother's amusement. Her favourite was the fable of Vesuvius, a honey-loving polar bear whose fear of bees sent him on a series of ridiculous, escalating Arctic shenanigans to acquire it. This one is all about Vantage's past. She grew up on a deserted ice island with her mother. Her mother being a fugitive meant Vantage was raised alone without any friends or family to interact with aside from her mother. This led to her having quite a creative imagination, but also being a very skilled hunter because it was important for her and her mother to survive. Of course, we would know eventually things would change, Vantage would go on to join the Apex games, and her mother would end up in jail. And we're going to round out part 1 of this video series with that. Don't worry though, if I haven't covered your favourite legend just yet, check out part 2 coming very soon, and you'll get to see all the lore skins for your favourite legend, and also hear about the lore story behind them. Don't forget to like and subscribe, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.